This is a presentation from the 2013 Cannabis World Summit. Please visit www.cannabisworldsummit.com for more great cannabis information, which is available to you completely for free. This information is being made available to you in part thanks to our sponsors. Please visit their websites to learn more about their excellent products and services. The following presentation is for informational purposes only. The opinions expressed are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Leaves of Hope Productions, Inc. Please note that regardless of any statements expressed or implied in the following presentation, that we do not condone you breaking any laws. We are not providing any legal, medical, or financial advice of any kind. No comments about cannabis being a cure for any medical use, expressed or implied, is to be taken as a claim or guarantee. None of the statements have been verified by the FDA of the United States, Health Canada, or the governing organizations of your particular country. And again, this information is being provided for informational purposes only, and the participants exercise their freedom of speech discussing what they believe to be true. We do not guarantee the accuracy of any information provided. It is your responsibility to evaluate the information before you choose to make any use of it. Please consult with a doctor knowledgeable about cannabis prior to using cannabis, and or prior to discontinuing any medications you may be currently using. Please check with the laws of your country and region to determine whether you are legally permitted to use and or grow cannabis prior to any involvement with cannabis yourself. Even though we believe that cannabis ought to be legalized, we do not condone you violating any laws. Please review the legal disclaimers on the Cannabis World Summit website and only proceed to enjoy this presentation if you agree with all legal disclaimers, agree to hold the company, Leaves of Hope Productions, Inc., and the presenters harmless and are of legal age in your region. Thanks to Kevin MacLeod and Incompetech.com for the music used in this introduction. Hello, and welcome to the first annual Cannabis World Summit. I'm your host and founder of the event, Bobby, and today I'm going to be talking with you a little bit about what the summit is all about, how we've created it, who's some of the speakers, and a little bit about myself, as I'm sure some of you will have a few questions. But we're going to be talking a lot about the summit, and of course there's a lot of great speakers, including famous people such as Rick Simpson, Dr. Robert Melamede, Paul Stanford, Cheryl Schumann, and of course many others. But there's also a lot of unknown people from various places. Some of them have been, of course, found on forums. Some of them have been behind the scenes of various different businesses. There's even some from various different product manufacturers and companies that we've actually had the opportunity to interview as well. And of course, we're going to be talking a little bit more about some of those speakers a little bit later on during this this portion of the summit. So first of all, a little bit about the summit. I just want to be very clear that the intention of the summit is that it is meant to mimic a live conference event. So imagine, if you will, that you are at a live summit event, a physical location where there's a bunch of speakers, and of course they all come up on stage one by one and they share a talk for however long they speak for, presumably about an hour more or less. But of course, as many of you understand, there's a lot of great events that are happening on 420s, which are the April 20th, and a lot of other times throughout the year that there are conferences and events around cannabis, of course, but most people are simply unable to attend one of these things. Of course, it's far away. For many of you, it's in different countries. Some of you can't travel for a number of reasons, whether it be financial or just simply unable to for physical conditions. But the wonderful thing about the Cannabis World Summit is that this is an online event. So I want you to imagine it as a physical event, a physical conference. However, it is completely virtual. So this allows two things. Anybody with sufficient internet access can participate and attend this conference, this live summit event. And of course, it is available worldwide thanks to it being on the World Wide Web. So therefore, this is literally something that everybody in the world can attend. And of course, there's a lot of great 420 events. For example, the Seattle Hemp Fest is recognized as being the largest physical event in the world. And we envision that the Cannabis World Summit over the coming years will grow to become the largest 420 event. Not that we're trying to compete with anybody, and this will not be by any means a physically large event, but simply just in reference to the amount of people who are gathered together because of the nature of this event, that everybody with sufficient internet access can attend. So I would like to encourage all of you to, of course, participate in this conference as though you are attending a physical conference. However, there's obviously a few differences. One, it's spread out over a 10-day period. Now, if you were attending a live conference, it would typically be a 2 or 3 day event, such as a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and of course it would run all day long, from morning till evening, and of course I'm sure there'd be fun after activities as well. However, of course, with the summit being online, I don't expect any of you to sit throughout the entire day just listening to all these wonderful speakers. So what we've done is we've literally broken it up into manageable chunks that you can enjoy on a day-to-day basis. And that's the reason why this event is provided as a 10-day event, so that you can enjoy little bits of it here and there throughout this 10-day window. So I understand a lot of you may be going to work or school or whatever it may be that you do with your time during the daytime, but in the evening, instead of watching your regular TV programs, perhaps you can just leave the TV off temporarily and enjoy the wonderful information that is being provided to you by all these fabulous speakers at the Cannabis World Summit. Now, of course, this is presented and provided as a 10-day event. However, one of the benefits and features of this is that we are not going to be removing this content at the end of the 10 days. What does that mean to you? Well, if you really enjoyed something, you can, of course, enjoy it again after the 10 days. You can listen to it over again. You can refer your friends and family or other people whom you know would benefit from the content. You can let them, of course, know about the content and encourage them to listen to it after the summit is over. But one of the reasons why we're doing it this way is we consider that the information that is being provided for you here at this event is so important, especially at this time when cannabis legalization efforts are really reaching a tipping point, and we really need to convey this information. There's a lot of fabulous information for you to understand about the benefits of this miraculous plant, what it can do for you from a physical health perspective, but also what can it do to save the planet. We're actually going to be talking a lot about these subjects, and this information is of extreme benefit. And we firmly believe in the concept that education leads to freedom. So we've created this entire event for you to have the opportunity to learn from these world-class speakers, from some of these absolutely fabulously knowledgeable experts in their fields who are sharing their information with you during the course of the summit. So, of course, enjoy the talks during the 10 days, but I want you to also realize that this information will not just disappear at the end of these 10 days, but will remain indefinitely so that you can continue to enjoy it. But we also encourage you to refer your friends and family and other people whom you know would really benefit from this information, or at least to learn from this information, to come to the summit and, of course, educate themselves. Now, I'd like to explain to you the vision of the summit. Now, there's 3 stages to the summit that I'm sort of envisioning here. And for 2013, which is of course this summit here, the very first of the first annual event, we consider it much like a seedling. So imagine if you plant a cannabis seed, and of course it just poked its head out from the ground, and now you have those little leaves that are coming up the top. This is the stage that I envision right now the summit is currently for our 2013 premier event, that it's in the seedling stage. We have great visions for this summit event, but it's going to take time for it to grow and to evolve into becoming what we've been envisioning for it all along. Next year, for 2014, we consider it the vegetative growth stage of the summit event, where of course it's going to grow, it's going to get larger, it's going to get even better than it currently is, but it is still moving towards the vision of what we're holding. And we expect that by 2015, we'll reach the flowering stage of the Cannabis World Summit event, where it will become what it was always intended to be. Now, of course, I just want to be clear here that we planned a lot of this back in the winter months, and of course we started this project a little bit late, and I'll be talking a little bit about the inception of this project and how it got started. But of course we were planning, and we had hoped that more suppliers and more advertisers would come on board, which of course would help grease the wheels financially, so to speak, in order to be able to make the summit event what it's always been intended to be. So of course we wanted to outsource a lot of the aspects of the project. For example, the editing of the audios and videos, we wanted to have that professionally prepared. But unfortunately, we didn't have the responses from the advertisers that we expected at this year. So we had to change and modify our plans a little bit. Ultimately, what that really means is we went a little bit lower budget in order to make this event happen. And what that really translates to is I've actually literally done everything by myself. Now, I did have an assistant that I had hired for a little while near the beginning, but towards the end, I literally had to do everything by myself. Now, another activist who was interviewed for the summit, he explained it to me like this. And of course, this makes a lot of sense, that the advertisers and a lot of the people, they were uncertain whether or not the summit is going to be a real event, it's going to happen for real, or if it's just going to be a dream that just flakes and dies and nothing really materializes of it. So, of course, the advertisers are wanting to see what is going to happen. And, of course, also this is a new model for everything. And I understand that. Of course, that makes sense, and I appreciate the fact that some companies took a leap of faith, and some, of course, were a little bit more cautious, perhaps. But I hope that since this summit has, of course, come to fruition, and we have over 30 interviews and lots of amazing content that we're delivering to you, so that you can learn from, and we've really done it. I hope that this stands, that people take notice, and perhaps for next year we'll get more advertisers involved. And the reason for it, again, you have to understand, this is a project of passion, not a project of profit, but a project of passion, where we're passionately sharing this information. We're passionately working towards this common objective of legalizing this amazing, miraculous plant for so many reasons. But of course, it takes finances in order to grease the wheels of getting this project done. I would like to hire more people and eventually be able to do more things and outsource some of the aspects of the project, rather than, of course, doing everything myself. And I'm not claiming to be particularly talented in several things. And of course, I know that there are talented individuals that would be more than happy to outsource in order to get the summit projects completed. So I just also want to be clear on another thing. So we are, of course, going to be looking for advertisers for the 2014 event. And of course, we hope that they recognize that we've launched this, we've done this. This is a real project and a real activist project for the world. But I would like to also draw everyone's attention to another thing here. On the right-hand side, you will notice that there is a button that says, "We are not asking you for any money." What does that mean? Well, I invite you to click on that link and read that page just to understand what it is that we're talking about here. But what's very important for everyone to understand is that we are not selling you access to this amazing event. This is a completely free 10-day event where there's over 30 interviews, amazing articles, and lots of fantastic content here that's cannabis related. And I really believe that this will be providing a meaningful service to everybody around the world, especially at this time when legalization efforts are at the tipping point and we really need more quality information. So I hope that this will become a nice little portal where people will be able to access good quality information from these world-class experts and learn something and perhaps even share this information further. But again, we are not selling this information. And unlike other online conferences, guess what? At the end of the conference, we're leaving it online for free for you to continue to access. And of course, for everybody around the world to continue to access this amazing, astounding information. And we are not selling it. So you can actually get this completely for free. And we are doing this also because we think it's very important, because a lot of times you might have come to various different projects and they're essentially begging you for money. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong with asking for financial assistance towards making these types of projects move forward, because of course it is very beneficial and helpful to do so. However, I want to be very clear with you that we are not asking you for any money, and we're not selling this content for you, and this summit will be available for free even after these 10 days because of the importance of the information here. So we want nothing between us, no bad feelings, no feeling of like, ooh, they're asking for money. No, this is completely available for you, so please feel free to make use of this information. So, of course, I just want to share a couple little bloopers and lessons learned. Now, this is the first year that we're doing the summit, and I have had a lot of fabulous ideas and a lot of inspirational projects that I started working on. And I have to admit, in some respects, I've wasted a lot of money, or actually money as well, but a lot of time developing little projects that I ended up having to sort of put on a back burner and put on pause, which I intend to resuscitate and bring back to life for either next year or the following year, because these are fabulous ideas. However, because I didn't expect to do everything by myself, the original plan was, of course, to outsource a lot of help with all of this, and I just wanted to manage this project. Because, of course, the budget didn't allow for that, and we had to modify the plans, I had to, of course, step back and reduce some of my personal expectations for the summit, but I'm still holding on to the vision of that for next year and the years after to introduce those other plans. But a couple of things that I've learned is, first of all, when I get a speaker to agree to do an interview, do it right away. And what I've been doing is absolutely crazy. I spent months lining up all these interviews. Over 30 interviews were done for the summit, which you're going to be enjoying over the next 10 days. And what I've done is I've literally scheduled them all really close up before the summit, thinking that I'm going to have them all recorded in a span of about a month, the month before the summit, and then have them all edited down, which of course the plan was to have a company to do all that work. And then, of course, provide it all for the summit. Well, I've come to the realization that that is actually a really bad way of doing it, because I have stressed myself out like you wouldn't believe, because, of course, getting 30 plus interviews done in the month before the summit and then having them all edited and all the work required to put it all together, I can assure you that this was an absolutely crazy time for me right up to the final days before the summit. In fact, I'll even admit to you that a few projects are actually going to continue to be worked on and completed during the summit itself. So for next year, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be doing the interviews with the experts starting from May and literally working throughout the entire year, so that hopefully we will not be replicating this fiasco of having all these interviews packed in the span of about a month's time. And of course there was always delays with people, because people had to go on vacations or people got sick, and we of course had to reschedule. So of course we will not be repeating that. But what we will be doing is, of course, we will be interviewing people throughout the year. And later on at the summit, you can also find out more information if you or someone you know should be interviewed for our next year's summit event. Please refer them or refer yourself, and we'd be happy to discuss what topics you want to share, what messages you want to share with the world, and we will arrange an interview. And of course, we will not do that the month before the summit, but rather much sooner throughout the year. And of course, there was other lessons learned that throughout this entire time. I have to say that this was actually quite a journey of personal self-discovery. Of course, I learned a lot about cannabis talking with all these amazing experts, but it was also a journey of self-discovery because of so many things regarding this whole cannabis summit. I won't get into it right now, but I'm going to talk a little bit about me because I know a few of you have expressed some interest about who it is that's speaking, and of course, my voice is literally on every single interview. So it was not my intention to become in any way, shape, or form famous. This is really not my ambition to become a famous cannabis activist or get my 15 minutes of fame or have my name out there in this respect. However, it has evolved this way, and it is what it is. And I have to say that ultimately, I am very proud of the work that I have done for this summit, and of course, being a cannabis activist. I think this is actually an absolutely important role and a very significant portion of my life. Now, I didn't want to do this summit. To be quite honest with you, I've thought about this for a couple of years. I've literally had this idea for a couple of years, and I kept on thinking, wouldn't it be great if someone were to do this? Wouldn't it be fantastic if somebody else were to do this? So periodically I would look online and see if anybody purchased originally I was looking at marijuanaworldsummit.com. However, thanks to someone else out in Colorado, I spoke with him, and of course he helped me to realize that it would be better to change the name to the Cannabis World Summit. So I kept on looking at Marijuana World Summit, Cannabis World Summit, whatever, and nobody bought the domains and nobody was doing this. And I kept on thinking, geez, wouldn't it be great if someone were to do this? And then after literally a couple of years of thinking along these lines, it dawned on me that, well, if it's going to be, it's up to me. Unfortunately, nobody else is doing this. And you know what? This is really a great idea. And somebody really needs to bring these messages to the world and literally make this happen. One day, I was talking with my wife, and I shared with her, I got a very unusual email from GoDaddy, which is a domain name supplier, because I just kept on searching for the domains, and I never got a message from them that a domain that I had previously searched for was still available and that I should just buy it and snap it up. But on one fateful day, I received that email, and I looked on my smartphone. I use an Android phone, and I looked at the email and I thought, hey, that's really bizarre. I never received an email from GoDaddy saying that one of the domain names that I previously searched for and never purchased was still available. And somehow it seemed to have a serendipity, a synchronicity. Something just clicked and something felt right within me. And I thought, you know what? Maybe I should do this. Obviously, nobody else is doing this. If it's going to be, maybe it's up to me. And I mentioned it to my wife. And, well, contrary to what I thought, I literally just mentioned it as a passing thought. I had no serious intention to do this, actually. I just mentioned it to my wife that the domain was still available, and I just shared with her the idea. And a very shocking thing happened. She emphatically suggested that I do this. She strongly encouraged me to actually become the person to actually put on the Cannabis World Summit and to make this event happen for all of you around the world. And I have to say, I was shocked that my wife, of all people, had been encouraging me to do this. And for what it's worth, if my wife was not behind me on this, and if she did not encourage me to do this, I simply would not have done this. And I think to this day, I still would have been waiting for somebody to come up with this idea and to do this, take this project and run with it. Well, I think this is a very important project, and I think it's going to have some dramatic impact around the world. It's going to help thousands, maybe even, who knows? I don't know how many people will be dramatically impacted by this Cannabis World Summit, thanks to all the wonderful speakers and expert information that is being provided to you. Again, it's all for free. So thanks to my wife for encouraging me to do this. And you know what? I kind of realized in the end, I'm not going to divulge too much information about this, but you might sort of notice throughout some of the conversations that I have with some of the other speakers, I do have a little bit of a spiritual side of me, and I do kind of recognize that things happen for a reason. And when I look back on my life, it's like a game of connect the dots, where that drawing, you sort of draw these lines from dot number 1 to number 2, number 3 to number 4. And then eventually you begin to see the picture that it is that you're drawing. And in many respects, it's actually surprising to me, and I won't talk about it at this moment, but there's a lot in my life that has happened to literally prepare me for making this summit happen. And I realized that in many respects, my life has literally groomed me to be here today in order to do this and to share all this amazing information with all of you. And I'm proud to be here today doing this for you. Now, a little bit about myself. In addition to, why I did this summit, perhaps I should share a little bit about my story about how I came to cannabis. Well, I'll just say, for what it's worth, previous to using it medicinally, which started a couple of years ago, I've not been a cannabis user at all. I've used it literally. I can count on a hand, or maybe two hands, how many times I've ever touched cannabis in my life. I never smoked in high school. As a teenager, I never touched the stuff. I was a complete square. I completely bought into the propaganda and these false beliefs, these lies that cannabis, this devil weed, it's evil, it destroys your brain cells, it can annihilate your life, it's absolutely horrible, it's addictive, it's dangerous, you should stay away from it. And so, of course, I stayed away from it. Unfortunately, I went to cigarettes, and so in high school I started smoking cigarettes because of just my friends that I hung around with at the time. Unfortunately, and these weren't bad apples or anything like that. I don't want to give any wrong impressions, but my friends, of course, were smoking. I have to admit, I was a little bit of a nerd in high school. I was a bit of a science person, and well, just for what it's worth, obviously I didn't smoke cannabis because I was too much of a square. However, I did indulge in cigarettes, and it was literally one of the things that I most regret in my life. I wish I never started smoking cigarettes. I actually wish I started smoking cannabis back in high school, but I won't get into that right now. And of course, as an adult, a few times in my life, I had people who've, had a joint or something like that, and I enjoyed it with them. I never purchased, any cannabis myself. It was always literally given to me or at parties, and literally, again, it was just a handful of times. And I've had a couple of interesting, even though it was very little experience, I've had some really funny stories along those lines, which I won't get into right now. But I will say this. Fast forward a bunch of years, obviously I've stayed away from cannabis when I was younger. Now I'm currently, I'm going to be turning 39 in a couple of weeks after the summit is over. And so as you can see, I'm obviously in a later stage of my life, middle age, I suppose you could say. But I'm not a partier. I'm not into the drug scene. I am not into... Actually, I'm not a drinker either, just to be clear here. I drink maybe once every couple of months, and very little. I rarely ever get intoxicated with alcohol. And not that I think there's anything wrong with it, it's just a personal choice. Alcohol doesn't agree with me. I actually prefer not to get intoxicated. And I'll share the story. When I was much younger, of course, I did get extremely drunk, and that perhaps was a bit of an aversion for me, which created within me the desire to stay away from alcohol. So I just want to say, for what it's worth, I'm not in a stage of my life, nor have I really been attracted to inebriating substances, but there's something about cannabis that is absolutely magical, and I'm going to be talking a little bit more about that. But my personal story is, for the past decade, have been experiencing a lot of pain. Now, I've spoken with tremendous amount of cannabis users whose stories I've asked them, to share how they came to cannabis. And for what it's worth, the story that I'm about to share with you, my personal story, is actually the same story, just slight modification of details, but it's the same story that I've heard countless times from other people. They, in a nutshell, they were experiencing pain. They thought cannabis was bad. Eventually, they came to hear that cannabis can help. They tried it. lo and behold, it did a fabulous job. And then they realized that this is not the bad devil weed that they've been led to believe, but in fact, the angel weed. And that effectively summarizes my journey. Well, for what it's worth, for the past 10 years, I have been having excruciating pains in my knees and my feet sometimes as well, and a couple other joints in my body, but predominantly my knees. I had a few injuries when I was younger, a couple of ski injuries, even a biking injury. I went to the hospital, I remember a long time ago about this. I've even a snowshoeing injury. I'm up here in Canada. I did some outdoor activities, obviously involving snow, and my knees took the brunt of some of the the activities. And to make a long story short, for 10 plus years, I have been experiencing periodic chronic knee pain. So sometimes it would be like every day the pain would be there. Sometimes it would be more severe than other days. Sometimes I'd have little periods of time where I'd have a few weeks of no pain whatsoever. And sometimes I'd have periods of weeks where the pain for weeks was just absolutely intense. And for what it's worth, I of course, I used an absurd amount of painkillers to control these pains. Advil, for example, I found was effective for my pains, and I used ibuprofen and various different. I even had prescriptions for these horse pills of ibuprofen. And for what it's worth, I used to take regularly Advils on a daily basis. Now, of course, the bottle says don't take it more than like a week or two or something like that, and they say don't take more than, I can't remember how many pills, like about a dozen pills in a day. I regularly, and I mean regular, I mean for days and weeks on end, took 2 times and sometimes even 3 times the daily maximum published on the extra strength bottles of Advils and these other ibuprofen pills. And I was giving, various different opiates. I was given even Celebrex, which I completely refused to take. I have a daughter, and to make a long story short, it is my personal ambition as a father to one day walk my daughter down the aisle of her wedding. And from all the information that I'm aware of Celebrex, I completely refuse to take Celebrex because I kind of like living. And I mean, it was even on the front page or somewhere in the New York Times, and there was a lot of information about Celebrex. And as far as I'm concerned, I refuse to take any substance that can literally kill me. Opiates. I've been offered opiates. I've had Tylenol 3s. I've had other things as well. I completely refuse to take opiates because from my studying, I realized the addictive nature and the dangerous path. And I am absolutely convinced that, of course, marijuana has been called the gateway drug to harder substances such as heroin, which has been completely proven false. However, what I do recognize is that doctors are, in fact, the gateways to hard drug addictions, because a lot of times people take opiates and then their doctors stop prescribing them opiates, and then they turn to streets, to the drug dealers to get more opiate pills, and then they turn to harder forms of opiates, heroin, whatever, and it's really hard. And of course, I can't really speak about opiate addiction because I've not gone down that path. I'm very fortunate that I've been adamant to stay away from that, and I'm actually very glad that I found a much better alternative in terms of cannabis. But before finding cannabis, I have been searching and studying all sorts of alternative remedies. I've actually become an amateur herbalist. Now, I don't treat people. I've studied herbalism, and of course, I share some of my remedies with my family and all to keep them healthy and all. But I've studied a lot of different things, trying to control my chronic pains, as many of you have done as well. I've, of course, for the arthritis in my knees and my feet and my joints, I've been taking, like MSM, chondroitin, and glucosamine sulfate. I've even been using herbs such as, turmeric, cayenne, and other herbs as well, and even, the gelatin from pig's feet to rebuild the cartilage in my knees and all. Because for the longest time, I believed, and I still believe, that I had osteoarthritis. And for the past decade, I've been told that I have osteoarthritis, and I have to say it's been absolutely it's been mind-boggling what pain can do for you. There's been many times where I've literally been stuck on the staircase in my own home, literally standing there in the middle of the staircase in tears, crying because I could barely walk up or down the stairs. My knees just hurt so bad. I was afraid of falling down the stairs many times, because I was afraid that my knees might give out. Even using something like the toilet, okay, just lowering myself or raising myself from the toilet, especially when I was having these flare-up pains. Honestly, folks, it's demeaning to even say this to myself, but I actually gripped my hands on the toilet seats in order to raise and lower myself from the toilet. Just for what it's worth, because I didn't have the strength in my knees in order to be able to do that. A doctor recently diagnosed that I have something called patellofemoral, which my muscles in my knees are so weak and atrophied. Over the past decade, I haven't been exercising my knees because, well, it hurts. It hurts so bad. And so, of course, I was using all these other substances, I was trying to find ways. And, of course, these things such as glucosamine sulfates, the turmerics, all these things, they do help. And the cayenne, the capsaicin creams, they do help. But they're no miracle. I'm going to be honest with you, they're no miracle. But during all my searches, during all my Googling, all my research that I've been doing in order to find cures and look, evaluate medical procedures and also non-traditional and, of course, herbal and homeopathic and all these types of naturopathic remedies as well, one thing that I kept on stumbling across is information that cannabis, marijuana, can actually be of great benefit to arthritic sufferers and people who have knee pains and basically the problems that I've been having. Just for what it's worth, even the air conditioner of a car would literally create a flare-up in my knees. Just I couldn't have the cold air blowing in a car. The nighttime with the legs and the knees, and even my feet were so painful that there's so many, I even had, the plantar fasciitis and so many other things that I literally was walking on the sides of my feet because they just hurt so much. I was desperate. And as I've heard so many other people say, I'll try anything. I'll try anything. And I kept on for the longest time ignoring all the times I kept on coming across information that marijuana could help. I just kept on ignoring it because I thought, you know what, it's illegal. I don't want to go to jail. This is bad. It's evil. It's the devil weed. It's going to destroy my brain cells. It'll make me addicted. It'll hook me and of course do all these negative things. Well, of course, I now realize that everything that I've just said that's negative about cannabis is completely false. However, out of desperation, one day, I decided, what the hell? Let's just see how this works out. I spoke to my wife, and I would not have done anything illegal if my wife had not been supportive, because I respect my wife and I respect my family. I'm actually a father of 2 children. I don't want to do anything illegal. I'm a respectable member of my community, and I do a lot of great things, and I don't want to be talking too much about that here. But of course, I don't want to be doing anything that would add a stigma to me or to do anything negative to my family or my life. But of course, pain is pain, and when you have these pains, as I'm sure many of you who are listening can probably relate to, and in fact, I'll just say momentarily that I also understand that many of you listening to this probably have much more severe pains than I have. I recognize that my pains are pretty bad, and pain is pain. But I've spoken to some people, and you know what, I'll have to say, listening to, one speaker, how he got his back smashed by a baseball bat. Another speaker who, you know what, actually, I'm not going to talk about all the other speakers. You can listen to their own stories. But there's many people who have had outrageous health issues that cannabis has helped with. And of course, it's been far more severe than mine. But nonetheless, pain is pain, and I don't want to compare that, one person's pain is worse or more severe than another. When you're in pain, it doesn't really matter. This is not a pissing contest. This is not a contest, hooray, I win. No, hooray, you lose if you got the biggest pain. Sorry to say that for those of you who are in greater pain. But nonetheless, pain is pain, and we all need a solution. And what I've realized is that cannabis is great for people with epilepsy, cancer, so many severe painful conditions that it even replaces opiates. And there's a lot of great speakers that talk about how they can just completely forget about opiates because cannabis is a much better alternative than a lot of those other opiates and other drugs for health. But anyhow, I digress. I'm going back to my own story. So with the permission and blessing of my wife, I went out and sought out finding a gram of weed. It took me a couple of weeks to finally find a gram of weed. I was so nervous. I didn't know who to talk to. I had no idea how, of course, omnipresent cannabis is. I didn't know who to talk to. And, of course, a lot of people spoke, that I asked. Well, I kept on getting people saying, well, I give off a cop vibe because here I am, this late 30s individual man. I understand that I may have looked a bit like a cop, and of course that made people nervous. So of course I had a extra hard time acquiring any, but eventually somebody gave me a nug, literally a nug. It wasn't even a gram, and I took it home, and I smoked it, and I was astounded. I remember it actually, my pain just like disappeared. My knees, my feet, everything just felt so much better. Like even the tense muscles in my back, everything, all of a sudden, like after several minutes, just felt so much better. I couldn't believe how the pain had gone away. And to make a long story short, I ended up, after another exceedingly difficult time, and I even, had some really bad experiences trying to buy stuff on the street. I won't get into it, but unfortunately, I just for what I'll say for what it's worth, I really wish that this was available in stores. Like in some places in California, in some states, I know you can just walk into a store and buy the strain of your choice, and it's safe. Here, unfortunately, where I am in Canada, I literally had to go downtown, walking streets and putting myself in some compromised situation in order to get some medicine. I think that it should at least be available at drugstores, health food stores, or even where alcohol or tobacco is sold. Where there's regulations on these controlled substances. But anyhow, I digress. I ended up getting some more, and what I ended up finding was I initially just smoked it once or twice a week, experimenting with it with some of my pains. And I noticed an interesting thing. Of course, it made my pain go away, but I also noticed that it had an effect that was mimicking something like a preventative effect. I noticed that after smoking it for a couple of days after that session, that I noticed that any flare-ups that I might get weren't as bad, or I wouldn't have any at all. And after months of doing this, I realized, oh my God, this is really wonderful. And it got to the point where I was literally smoking, and then I actually found information online that I actually made a light bulb vaporizer. That was my first experience with a vaporizer. And then I literally went to a Vapor Genie, and then to a Magic Flight Lunchbox, and then I've tried a few other things as well, which I'll talk about at another time. But the point that I realized was, wow, this had an effect that it helped me when I was experiencing pain, but it also seemed to have a bit of a preventative effect as well. And then I started getting into, juicing and oiling it, and of course I also used a little bit topically as well. And oh my God, when I discovered the topical applications of this was absolutely fantastic. I mean, you can literally apply some topically. You don't get high whatsoever, like no high. So there's no clouding of the mind. You can completely function and have all your mental faculties, and there's absolutely no clouding. I was literally able to smear some on my knees and carry on with my day, and I found that absolutely worked well. But where the miracle really happened was when I started consuming it internally, eating it, eating some oil and juicing it as well. And of course, later on I discovered Rick Simpson, and now of course I wasn't doing the Rick Simpson oil at this time, but this is when I started learning some really interesting, fascinating things. Smoking it and vaporizing it in many respects was beneficial for handling the pain while I was experiencing it. It had a little bit of an effect for the preventative. But where this medicine really shines, and I realize a lot of people recognize the same thing, was when you eat it, when you consume it orally, internally, and are able to take larger doses. And I was able to take it at night before going to bed. And so I wasn't experiencing high. I wasn't having a recreational high. I was medicating at night. And of course, I slept like a baby. My leg pain at night, it went away. Of course, if there's inclemental or bad weather coming, because I could feel it in my bones, could be beautiful skies, but I can know like the next day, a storm is on its way. I'm sure many of you who have arthritic pains can understand what I'm referring to. And when I started eating it, there was one time I actually was able to buy a large amount of trim and leaves from some grower, and that literally was a transformative experience for me, because I was able to make some oil, literally coconut oil, from some of the leaves. Now, fortunately, well, I'm not going to talk about the legal aspects of it, but I haven't been doing it since Harper has changed the laws. Unfortunately, back in Canada about 6 months ago, the laws have dramatically changed, so I haven't been able to utilize this medicine in this way since then. But what I literally found by making an oil, using that topically, but also I was eating it at night, and also I was able to juice the fan leaves. I literally just froze it, and then of course put some in the blender with water, blend it, and then just pour it through a strainer, and I was able to extract most of the fiber stuff and drink this green liquid. I have to say that eating the oil at night and juicing the cannabis leaves had an absolutely unbelievable, miraculous effect for me. During the couple months period that I was able to do that, unfortunately, I haven't been able to buy any more these kind of leaves since, and I'm going to be looking for some more during the summer or in the fall, because it's absolutely outstanding. Unfortunately, it's not that easily available for me at this time. But the point of the matter is that a lot of the pains that I had literally disappeared. In fact, since doing that treatment for a couple of months, a lot of the problems that I have experienced have dramatically improved, and some have actually vanished. Some, like for example, plantar fasciitis, I haven't felt it since that time. I've never even once felt even a twinge of that pain. I have since that time been able to walk on my feet normally, not on the sides of my feet, but normally, like a normal human being, just able to walk without pain. Unbelievable. And of course, my knees, like about a 90% improvement. Unbelievable. And there's been a lot of tremendous shifts in my life. I can talk at length about this, but I don't want to get too far down this road at this time, taking up too much time. But I just wanted to share a little bit about my journey with cannabis and how much it has helped me. And like many others who have been helped by cannabis, I realized that this truly is a powerful medicinal plant. I use it medicinally, and I've been trying ever since to get my Canadian license, which is called an MMAR, which is in order to have legal access. But I've since found that unfortunately the system here is kind of wonky in many respects, that people can, it's sort of a hit and miss. Some people get their licenses, some people don't. I know that I absolutely qualify under the Category 2 of the Health Canada MMAR program. Unfortunately, all my attempts to get into the program have been blocked. I've been praying for Matt Myrna, who's been hailed as cannabis champion of the world, to succeed with knocking down the Canadian prohibition of marijuana and effectively legalizing marijuana. Unfortunately, I'm still in the process of getting my MMAR. Fortunately, however, through the process of doing the summit, I have found a company by the name of Greenleaf Medical Clinic. And I'm going to be actually working with them a little bit closer to finally get my legal permits in order, because I've been having an exceptional difficult time. But the unfortunate thing is, and the reason why this has gone to court, is because a tremendous amount of Canadians have been essentially blocked from getting into this program. Lots of people can benefit from cannabis. Lots of people are technically legally entitled in Canada and of course other countries to use cannabis as medicine. However, because of the way that the program has been set up, most people simply will not get access to it. Even if they're entitled to it, I'm entitled to it, but And there's people who are even more entitled to it than I, who are in category 1, who are still blocked from getting it as well. So anyhow, that's another discussion I won't get into, but of course you can definitely listen to Matt Myrna's interview later on in the summit, and also with Fonda Betts from the Greenleaf Medical Clinic, who we talk more about these issues. So if you're Canadian, definitely pay attention to those speakers. But before I move on, I just want to share one more thing that cannabis has actually done for me. This is a minor thing, but it's actually quite a significant thing. I mentioned earlier that I, in high school, was a smoker of cigarettes. It's one of the greatest things I regret ever starting, and I wish I never touched a cigarette in my life. Unfortunately, I did, and I became addicted to one of the most addictive substances in the world, and it's apparently about as addictive as heroin and a lot of other opiates. So even though I cannot speak to an opiate addiction, having been a person who's been trying numerous times to quit smoking, I can say, for what it's worth, that smoking's hard, and I can, in that respect, relate to people with opiate addictions, at least. But marijuana has also been called the gateway back drug because it's been recognized to have the potential to help people wean themselves off and go through the withdrawal symptoms of much heavier substances, addictive substances. And by using marijuana, they're able to go through the withdrawal symptoms and, of course, wean themselves off those other things. In fact, listen to the talk with what was his name from Frank's Fertilizers. Not Frank, sorry. Oh my goodness, I'm embarrassed that I'm drawing a blank on his name here. But anyhow, from our fertilizer. Oh my goodness. Anyhow, anyways, I apologize to him for just forgetting his name. Actually, I should have it here. Just give me a second here. Jake's Fertilizer. My apology, Jake. Jake's Fertilizer. He of course talks about how actually it wasn't him. It was someone else. My goodness, I spoke to so many people. I think it was Adam Asenberg. My apologies for getting your name wrong there. He spoke at length about how he was able to completely get over his opiates, and he was taking, as he claimed, enough morphine and opiates to put down an elephant. So for what it's worth, anyhow, one of the features of marijuana, it's known to have the ability to be able to help people who are addicted to other substances to step back and get off of those other substances. So a lot of people who've had opiate addictions and other types of addictions have successfully used marijuana in order to wean themselves off of those other more dangerous drugs. And so as a gateway back drug, I decided to try that principle with cigarettes. So to make a long story short, I've tried for years patches, gums, Zyban, the pills, all sorts of things like that. And to make a long story short, what I've realized is this. Any nicotine replacement therapy is just a delay of the inevitable of eventually having to release the nicotine. So, yes, it can help in some respects, but a patch is still keeping you addicted to the nicotine. The gum is still keeping you addicted to the nicotine. The best way to quit nicotine is to quit it cold turkey. However, it has some pretty nasty withdrawal effects. Of course, I'm sure many of you who have quit smoking will understand that for the worst is the first 4 days or so. Then, of course, psychologically for a few weeks. What I found was that by using cannabis, when I was going through those 4 days of withdrawal, I was able to, of course, get over the pain of the nicotine withdrawals. And then for a few weeks, whenever I needed to have a smoke, rather than going for a cigarette, I would have a little puff of cannabis. And lo and behold, after doing that, this finally worked for me. And I also had, just to add, of course, I also made some cigarettes, literally bought a machine, and I just packed it with mints or even lemon balm. And I would smoke sometimes that when I just was out with friends or something like that, just to have something to smoke for the physical habit. But anyhow, when I was going through withdrawals, or when I was having a nic fit, or when I was having one of those moments of stress that I was needing a cigarette, I reached and said for a little bit of cannabis with a one hitter, and that actually helped me to quit smoking. I am now about 1.5 years smoke free, and I'm very proud that I finally kicked the nicotine habit, which for decades I've been trying to get rid of. And it's actually marijuana that actually helped me to do this. It's not this devil weed, but actually I give gratitude for the angel weed that it actually is, that it helped me to quit the cannabis. Now, I would just like to share a couple of additional reasons why I've been doing this project, for what it's worth. Now, when I was a child, back, when I was, approximately 10 years old, this was more or less 10 years old or so, I had my aunt. She was dying of cancer. And my mother moved myself and I to my aunt's home. She essentially became sort of like a secondary mother to my cousins. And make a long story short, my aunt was dying of cancer, and I saw her in the hospitals. And of course, it was a really sad time for my cousins, especially because that was their mother, of course. But for me, it was a hard time as well. And one fateful day, something unusual happened. Now, of course, I mentioned earlier that I was a bit of a science geek in high school, but I was a bit of a science enthusiast even back in elementary school days. And this was around the time that I was in grade 5 that this happened. My aunt came home from the hospital for one weekend, and she got to have a little bit of family time back at home. And I remember this one particular moment with her that really stands out in my mind. Because she knew that I was sort of a Mr. Scientist, people always sort of kind of jokingly referred to me as a Mr. Scientist even back in those days. And my aunt looked at me and she pleaded with me and she said, "Robert, I want you to find the cure for cancer." And you know what? That really stuck out in my mind. Here's my dying aunt, dying of cancer, and she asked me to find the cure for cancer. And of course, at the time, I was just a kid. I said, "Yes, I will." I looked at her, and of course, in my heart, I said that with a sense of passion to her. Yes, of course I will. But little did I know that later on in life that I would actually find the cure for cancer. And I've tried a few other things in the past. I've actually done research about it years ago, but literally it was thanks to Rick Simpson that I was able to finally find the cure for cancer. And of course, I didn't find it. It was actually Rick who's publicized it. But why am I doing this? I've interviewed Rick and, of course, others who are talking about how to use cannabis for treating cancer. And it's part of this summit. And the reason why I'm doing this is I feel it's very important, it's crucial to spread this message. There are tremendous amounts of people out there dying today who are needlessly suffering, and they're praying for a miracle, wishing that there was either a cure for their cancer or at least something that could significantly help them. And little did they know that it exists. However, the information has been suppressed, and we'll talk about the reasons for that later on. But I think it's absolutely vital that the information that Rick Simpson has shared with the world needs to become common knowledge. Ladies and gentlemen, when people think of cancer, the first words out of their mouth should be Rick Simpson, hemp, cannabis. These are the things that people need to understand. And of course, I'm spreading the information here with the Cannabis World Summit, and I encourage all of you to share this information, pass it forward, pass it on. If you know someone, and chances are you do, or you soon will know someone who has cancer, let them know about this information. It is so critically important. But another reason why I'm also doing this Cannabis World Summit is for decades, there's been a passion within me to do something. I've been seeing this world from an environmental perspective. Our world is dying. And many economic things, especially over the past several years, of course, there's been a lot of economic downturns and things that could be said. And I've been wanting to do something for saving the world, whether it be economically or environmentally, which has been, of course, for decades, been much more important. And in recent years, I've grown somewhat pessimistic in many respects because for a long time, I've actually been trying to do stuff to help the world, but I realized, what the heck can I do? There is nothing that I can do. However, for the longest time, because I lived out in BC years ago, and I've learned that cannabis can save the world. Now, I kind of rudimentarily understood that, we could, and I've seen out west the clear cutting of forests. I remember the first time I saw a clear cut strip of land on a mountainside, I literally cried because it just struck me as being so sad that this clear cutting is happening. And I realize now that, of course, we can be planting cannabis seeds even there where it's been clear cut and have an annual renewable harvest of fiber, that we don't need to be harvesting trees for paper or even for creating lumber and building houses and many other things that we need trees for. But I digress. I'm not going to talk about that aspect right now because we will focus on that later on. However, what is important to the message is that I was feeling depressed in the sense that I didn't see anything that I can do. But then this Cannabis World Summit, I realized, you know what? Cannabis is a real and viable solution to help the environment. It's a real and viable solution to help people's lives who are in serious pain, dying of cancer, epilepsy, and so many other conditions, even, common aches and pains that we all have. It's a fabulous medicine. But I now realize that I am doing this because I finally feel that I found a calling in my life that I can actually put my energy and my efforts behind in order to do something that's beneficial for the world. I am doing this for the children. Many times you hear people say, oh, think of the children, in terms of cannabis, because, oh, it's so dangerous for children. Well, folks, I'm not going to explain right now, but cannabis is definitely no danger to children, and I won't be talking about that at this point and elaborating upon that concept. But I'll say this. I love the line, think of the children. Yes, let's think of the children. Let's think about the world that we are about to let them inherit from us, where we've literally, raped and pillaged our planet of our resources. We've polluted it. We've filled our atmosphere with carbon dioxide. In about 17 years from now, scientists are now forecasting that by the year 2030, we're going to be facing an ice-free Arctic in the summer, which of course is unprecedented. We've never had that happen before in recent times anyways. And of course, this is going to have devastating effects on our environment. Yet we have a real solution here. Cannabis is not only beneficial for human bodies, and of course, it's also beneficial for human bodies as a food, but I'll talk about that later on. It can help the planet. So let's think about the children. We need to legalize cannabis for so many reasons. But I just want to share this point here. And it was actually in the process of doing this summit that this concept had really gelled in my head. I kind of had this thought before the summit, but it was actually during the first interview with Rick Simpson that I had my personal epiphany where I realized the following statement is absolutely true. And listen carefully. Cannabis is the most important political issue of our time. There is no political issue more important than the legalization of marijuana. And you know what, folks? I realize that statement to many of you may sound absolutely absurd, but allow me to justify that statement. What other political issue, by the simple stroke of a pen, by legalizing this plant, can have so many dramatic impacts that not only impact on a national level things for a country, but can actually impact the world? This issue impacts our personal freedom. It is the medicine for the people. It can dramatically reduce crime. The easiest way to get safe streets and communities and to literally reduce crime is to eliminate the number one source of funding for organized crime. As soon as you eliminate the prohibition on marijuana, most organized crime will vanish, literally overnight. Folks, that's huge. The economy, my God, we're spending millions and billions of dollars policing a failed drug war, whereas we could actually be making money, not just by taxing marijuana usage, but just by regular taxation of the marijuana sales and also the industrial and agricultural aspects that we can have just by being allowed to grow this plant. We can solve world hunger. cannabis seeds is the most nutritious seed on the planet. There is no seed that is better for the human body. You can literally live and thrive eating cannabis seeds alone. It has the perfect amino acids and fatty acid blends that our bodies absolutely need. It is the healthiest seed for us to actually eat. And we could solve the world hunger because, folks, this grows like a weed. You know what? We can allow countries to grow this where other crops would absolutely fail. Cannabis would thrive. And of course, we already touched upon the environmental aspects. Of course, deforestation, carbon sequestering from the atmosphere. And of course, we can completely eliminate the need for fossil fuels. And definitely listen to the interview with Paul Stanford where he explains all of this. And of course, the agricultural benefits and the industrial benefits of hemp. You know what? This is the most useful plant on the planet. There, bar none. I'm not even aware what the second most useful plant on the planet is, and whatever it is, it would be a distant second to cannabis. It is absolutely absurd that this plant, which has so many benefits to us, not just medicinally, so many benefits, and really, there are no dangers. All the dangers that we've been led to believe were absolute lies. And you will learn more throughout this conference about what those lies were, and that this prohibition was based on a lie, and that this prohibition is literally for the benefit of corporations to be making more profits. Because obviously profits are more important than people's lives and the planet. So you know what, I'm just going to remain calm here. But for the bottom line is this. Obviously, we need to change this. Profits are not more important to people. And who cares about profits if you're dying? And who cares about profits if our planet is in turmoil? We need to literally legalize this plant because of all of these benefits. And I hope that just from the brief little minor discussion that I've had over the past couple of minutes, I hope that your mind will just at least crack open to the possibility of realizing that cannabis truly is the most important political issue of our time. There is no other political issue that is more important than the legalization of cannabis. Folks, I cannot say this emphatically enough. I know that some of you will laugh at this statement. I know that some of you will think that I'm absolutely crazy. But I encourage you, if you think that I am insane with this statement, I implore you to do your own due diligence, do your own research, listen to some of the other speakers at this summit, and then you come and tell me what is more important. Because chances are, cannabis can actually help in the political issue that you are thinking of in and of itself. There is no political issue that is more important and has as many reaching benefits as a simple legalization of the world's most useful plant. Now, just switching the topic here, a little bit about a personal journey. I've learned a lot. Doing this summit. Now, before the summit, obviously I had a passion to do this, and I've learned a lot before doing the summit. But since doing the summit, I've learned a tremendous lot by speaking to this other speakers, and of course doing all the research that I've done in preparation for this event. And you know what? I know that my journey of learning is just only begun in many respects. That this is actually a lifetime of learning, and I am dedicated to freeing this plant that is so beneficial to all of us. And you know what? I've made a lot of friends through the process of doing the summit. I've learned a lot from the speakers. I've had a lot of fantastic experiences with them, but I made some friends too. Most notably, I'd like to mention that I've made a really good friend with Lincoln Horsley. He's an absolutely fantastic guy. He's created his own website called Cure Your Own Cancer. And he's been interviewed. Of course, the interview that you hear at the summit is literally the beginning of my interactions with him. Since then, we've spoken on numerous occasions and interacted, and I've actually even helped other people behind the scenes. And this is information that you will never know because we're not making this public, just not because it's a secret, just because, of course, there's just so much information here. But he's an absolutely fantastic guy. He's got a great heart, and he is passionate about teaching people how to use cannabis to help them cure their cancer. If you know someone who's got cancer, my God, folks, direct them to Lincoln's website, cureyourowncancer.org. He's literally created a resource where he's created a resource of videos, testimonials, information, and links to all the other websites and resources online. So it is literally a great starting portal. If you or someone you know has cancer, that is definitely the website you should be going to. And if you have someone who has cancer, definitely refer them there as well. You may very well save them. And of course, you know, it's important for so many reasons. Amanda Hitt, actually, she's absolutely fantastic personality. She's absolutely effervescent, and she shares so much of her passion with so many people. I see her involved in so many cannabis-related things, and of course, she is a breast cancer survivor. She's been actually quite helpful with me with the summit, and she's actually doing a lot. I know she's going to actually be a big part of next year's summit as well. For what it's worth, Cheryl Schumann. Cheryl Schumann, many of you I'm sure have seen her when she was on the Ricky Lake show, and of course she was with Brave Michaela, and she is omnipresent. It's almost hard to be on any social media site and be involved in the world of cannabis and not have heard of Cheryl Schumann. She's doing a lot of great things, and the reason why I'm mentioning her here is, you know what? I could say this about everybody. All the speakers are absolutely fantastic. I have to say that I've got a really warm fuzzy from everybody. But Cheryl Schumann, here's this Hollywood personality, and I literally thought that, a Hollywood personality would be difficult to get a hold of her, and I have to say, I've spoken with Cheryl for hours before the interview and for hours after the interview. And I have to say, she is a fantastic person. She's got a great heart, and she's intelligent. She's a great marketer, and she's fantastic at everything she's doing. She's doing a lot for the cannabis movements these days as well. She's even working on making a TV show. However, she's a real person. Well, she is a Hollywood celebrity, but she's a real person, and she's got a great heart. And I'll just say, for what it's worth, definitely listen to her interview, and I'm sure you'll see it as well. Jamin Shively, I invited him because of his Dago Paysar company in honor of his great-grandfather who grew cannabis. He's a former Microsoft executive who turned into a cannabis smoker, and of course he's creating his own brand. He's setting up a national brand of cannabis, literally the first to do it on the level that he's doing it. And I wish him great success, but I have to say I have absolutely the utmost respect for this man. And you know what? He, and actually everybody, I don't want to single people out anymore. I'm just going to stop here. Every single person that I've interviewed, I've been blown away with and literally impressed with. I, of course, was impressed before I got to know them, and that's why I invited them to be a participant. However, after speaking with them, my heart's warmed up to these people. These people really care. These are not people who are doing this for a profit. Of course, some of them may have businesses, and of course they need to turn a profit, but these people are doing it because they have a passion for the plant. And you know what? Listen to the interviews and you'll hear what I'm talking about. But there's over 30 interviews for the next 10 days of this summit that I've done for you to learn from and enjoy. And of course, they've gone through different subjects. Some of them, of course, dealing with different aspects. Some are more legalization, some are more medicinal, some are more industrial hemp, and and so on and so forth. However, there's a lot of content out there. I'll say I'll be impressed with anybody who actually goes through everything on this summit, because there's a lot of content. In fact, I won't be surprised if I'm the only person on the planet who actually listens to everything on the summit, because, hey, I created it, so I had to. But if there's only 3 interviews that you listen, or only 3 of the features of the summit, obviously you're listening to this talk of me speaking here with the opening for the Cannabis World Summit. But if there's only 3 that you're going to listen to, here's the 3 that I really encourage you to indulge in. The Rick Simpson interview. It's by far, it's a huge, long interview, but the information is absolutely incredible. This is information that should be common knowledge, that people should be going for cannabis first rather than chemotherapy. Now, I don't want to step on the toes of doctors, or I'm not making any medical claims here. I'm just sharing this information as a personal view, and I'm just sharing this as a personal belief. And of course, in my freedom of right and speech, I'm just sharing this. Now, I want to be clear here. I'm not encouraging anybody to break the law, or of course, talk to your doctors and of course do all that sort of stuff. But I think that what Rick Simpson shares here is absolutely vital. People need to know that if they got cancer, it's not necessarily a life sentence. They can actually get this information, which is accessible in multiple sources. But what this interview is extra beneficial is not only do we explain explicitly how to make the oil and how to use it, Rick talks about a lot of things. We talk for hours about a number of different things. You learn about the details of Rick's story, but we also go into the details of a lot of different things. And I ask a lot of questions that I've not heard anybody ask before. I've asked questions of Rick that I'm sure some of you have probably thought these same questions. And so I played what I like to call Angel's Advocate. Angel's Advocate is my version of Devil's Advocate. I just simply prefer to stay on the positive side. And I asked Rick, well, why can't we do this or that? Why can't we do it another way? And you know what? Rick had some fantastic answers to a lot of the questions, such as why do we need to start with a pound of cannabis for a cancer treatment? Why can't we just start with an ounce? And he explains, of course, yes, you can, but he explains the reason why it's advantageous to start with the larger amount, but it can, of course, still be done with the smaller amount. We talk about the various different solvents. We talk about many different things that I ask a lot of questions. And so those of you who are interested, either because you have cancer or have had cancer or know someone who has cancer, you definitely should be listening to this interview. But also, you should listen to this interview just to learn what to do if you or a family member ever gets cancer for yourselves. But there's a lot of information in this recording that I believe is hard to find or impossible to get access to that information anywhere else. So if you're a big fan of Rick Simpson, and I think everybody in the world ought to be, please definitely indulge in listening to that interview. And another one, because of course Rick Simpson focuses on the medicinal aspect. Now another interview is with Paul Stanford. Now of course he has a lot to say about medicinal aspects of medical marijuana, and he's done a lot to help Americans access legally medical marijuana in the states that are permissible for medicinal access. However, during our interview we don't really delve into the medicinal aspects at all. What I really encourage, and we really focus on the discussion with Paul Stanford, is how hemp can save the planet. We of course touch upon how the hemp seed is the most nutritious seed on the planet, how it can feed, solve world hunger, help us. But we put a major emphasis on the discussions, and he talks about how hemp is truly a viable alternative energy source, and how we can literally divorce fossil fuels and stop spewing all this carbon dioxide into our atmosphere, and how we can actually literally go carbon neutral and even sequester carbon from the atmosphere by using hemp as building materials and so many other things. And now I won't get into all the details of the interview, but definitely listen to Paul Stanford's interview, because there you will realize that many people have been saying hemp can heal the world. It's true. Hemp can heal the world, and it's become a popular buzz phrase. But how many people really understand how hemp can save the world? Most people think, oh, maybe it could, but there's a kind of a doubt in the back of their minds. Folks, I encourage you to listen to this interview, but then also to explore even further and research even more. Is this true that hemp can save the planet? Yes, it is. Research it on your own, and then realize that we have a viable solution to many of the problems of the environment that scientists are realizing. We have huge problems facing our future generation, like our children, our grandchildren. Unfortunately, folks, think of our children. We need to provide them a better planet, and hemp can do that. And, there's just so much. I'm going to just save that for the interview. But folks, please, 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 research how hemp can heal the planet. So, of course, Rick Simpson talks about how hemp can heal the body. Paul Stanford talks a lot about how hemp can heal the planet. Now, a third one that I really want to draw some attention to is Bad Kitty Smiles. Bad Kitty, I've actually found her on a forum in Grass City. Of course, the reason I discovered her is because some time ago, I was researching information on how I can actually prepare medicinal oils so that I can use topically and eat it for medicinal use for my own pain and my own situations. And of course, throughout all the information that I found online, I kept on coming back to Bad Kitty Smiles information, because you know what? her information truly is outstanding. She gives a lot of really, really quality information. And of course, you can go to the forums and read these massive threads and learn a lot from her just by going to the Grass City forums. And I encourage all of you to go there. And in fact, I encourage all of you to go there to learn from her, but also after you've watched the video that she's prepared, to go share your appreciation and your gratitude for what she's done. She has created an astounding video where she films how she actually grows her own cannabis and then turns those buds into medicinal oils and things that you can consume and use topically and eat. And she discusses how to do all that. She has provided and created a video resource that I think is literally going to be destined, as soon as the summit airs it, it's going to become an online classic for people to learn how to work with cannabis. This is top quality information, folks. And if you're looking to learn how to cook with cannabis, use it medicinally as an edible, folks, definitely you want to see the Bad Kitty Smiles. And you know what? I think it's very, very important that you send her your love and appreciation, because what she's done is absolutely incredible. She also has a book that she's planning on releasing in some date in the future, and she's also hoping on making a DVD. We're going to create some way for her, for you to subscribe to her email list or something like that, or at least send her an email if you're interested when her book comes out or when her DVD comes out, because it's absolutely fantastic information. And especially if you're a medicinal user, you definitely want to learn how to do what she does. And of course, not only does she teach you the basics of how to make these oils, but look at some of the recipes that she teaches. I mean, these foods, these culinary delights look absolutely delightful on a dinner table. Forget about the fact that it's medicinal. I mean, it's just mouth-wateringly delicious. But of course, it's also infused with cannabis to have the medicinal aspect. So definitely enjoy these videos that she's prepared. So folks, there's a lot of great content. I invite you to go to the speaker information page. Look at all the speakers that we have lined up for 2013, the first annual Cannabis World Summit. Lots of great information. And I want you to learn and share this information. Now, sharing is so important. Help spread the word. Please click on the link to learn how you can help spread the word. Do your part. Pay it forward. You don't have to pay me. You don't have to pay any of these speakers back. Just pay it forward. Tell the people who you know can benefit from cannabis, people who are suffering from various different illnesses. I mean, they don't have to be suffering from cancer or anything serious. Even lesser things, people have chronic aches and pains, can benefit from cannabis. Spread the word. Tell people about this site. Remember, I'm not making any more money whether one person or a million people come to this site. This is a project of passion. I hope that you understand that by now. So please spread the word about this project, this website, and let people in on this absolutely incredible information. And remember, the motto of the summit is through education, freedom through education. And so please spread the word. And of course, there's a lot of great content here, and I hope that you all enjoy everything that I've put here for you. And of course, I just want you to enjoy the summit. So with no further ado, please enjoy the rest of the speakers of this day, and of course throughout the rest of the summit. And I will be talking with you again at the end of the summit for a closing. But throughout the meantime, enjoy the wealth of information that you have here for you.